You're not even my real daughter." The words landed like a knife, cold and clean, slicing through 17 years of memories, scraped knees, bedtime stories, and the sound of his laugh when I'd make up silly songs in the car. I stood there, my heart stuttering in my chest, trying to breathe, trying to understand. My dad, had just looked me in the eyes and said I wasn't his. The room felt too still, too quiet. The walls of our living room, once warm and cluttered with picture frames, now looked unfamiliar. There was no warning, no fight, just those words and then silence. "My name is Ava. I'm 17 years old." And until that moment, I believed my life was, if not perfect, then at least solid. My dad, William, was a serious man, quiet, disciplined, sometimes hard to read, but I'd always thought I was his little girl. We had our routines: Saturday morning pancakes, our yearly trips to Grandma Ruth's cabin, the way he always carried my backpack when he picked me up from school. Nothing extraordinary, but it was ours. Lately, though, things had started to shift. Whispers between my dad and my uncle after Sunday dinners, locked doors, and quick glances when I entered the room. I thought it was stress. Work stuff. Maybe something with Grandma, whose health had started to decline. I never imagined it had anything to do with me. But that day, when Grandma's lawyer called about her final revisions to the will and mentioned my name as a beneficiary, something snapped in my dad. That was the moment he decided to tell me, to unravel my entire identity with a single sentence. It wasn't just a betrayal. It was a demolition. And I couldn't understand why he was doing it. Not at first. Not until I saw the panic in his eyes. The desperation. That was the moment everything changed. And I made a quiet promise to myself right then and there. I was going to find out the truth. Every piece of it. Even if it shattered what little family I had left. The next few days passed in a blur. I avoided my dad, not out of anger, but because I was afraid of what else he might say. What other truths or lies he had tucked away. I couldn't sleep. Couldn't eat. My thoughts spun like a carousel, slow and dizzying. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard his voice again. "You're not even my real daughter." At school, I kept my head down. Pretended I was just tired. But my best friend, Lena, knew better. "You've been quiet for 3 days," she said, nudging me with her elbow as we sat under the oak tree behind the gym. Like scary quiet. "What's going on?" I looked at her, my chest tightening. We'd been inseparable since 5th grade. She was the closest thing I had to a sister. If there was anyone I could tell, it was her. So I did. When I finished, Lena sat in stunned silence. "Wait, your dad told you that?" I nodded. "Out of nowhere?" "Right after Grandma's lawyer called. Said she updated her will and left me something." I paused. He looked at me like I was a stranger. Lena frowned. "That doesn't even make sense. You look exactly like him." I shrugged. "Not according to him." She leaned back against the tree trunk. "So what are you gonna do?" "I don't know," I admitted. "But it's like he's hiding something. And I don't think it has anything to do with DNA." At home, I started paying attention, really paying attention. My dad avoided me like I had become a threat. He barely looked up from his phone during dinner. If I asked about Grandma, he changed the subject. But I wasn't the only one noticing the cracks. My aunt, Clarissa, Dad's younger sister, came by more often than usual. She was sharp, a little eccentric, always dressed in mismatched layers and chunky jewelry. She used to intimidate me when I was younger, but now I saw something in her eyes that made me wonder if she knew more than she was letting on. One afternoon, when my dad was out, she cornered me in the kitchen. "Hey, kiddo," she said casually, flipping through the mail. "How you holding up?" I gave her a wary look. "Fine." She raised an eyebrow. "You're lying." "Badly." I hesitated, then blurted it out. "Did you know what he said?" "That I'm not his daughter." Her face didn't change. Not right away. But she stopped flipping through the envelopes. "Yeah," she said softly. "I heard." "So, is it true?" Clarissa looked at me, really looked. "You've always been his. From the day you were born." "I was there, Ava. I held you before he did." "Then why?" "Because he's scared. she interrupted. Because your grandma, God bless her, has more money than sense, and he doesn't want you getting any of it. My stomach turned. So he'd lie about being my dad, just to cut me out of a will? Clarissa's voice hardened. He'd do worse. That sentence hit me like a punch. I started digging. I knew Grandma Ruth had a safe at the cabin. She used to keep old photos, letters, even journals in there. If there were answers, they'd be there. But the cabin was a 3-hour drive away, and I'd need help getting there. So I told Lena everything: the will, Clarissa's warning, the safe. We're going this weekend, she said immediately, grabbing her car keys. No questions. The cabin sat by a lake, surrounded by pine trees and silence. It had always been my happy place until now. We found the key where Grandma always kept it, under the third flower pot by the porch. Inside, the cabin smelled like cedar and dust. Familiar and eerie. I found the safe in the back room closet. After a few wrong tries, I finally guessed the combination: Grandma's birthday. It clicked open. Inside were folders, photographs, and a sealed envelope addressed to me. My hands trembled as I opened it. Ava, if you're reading this, it means something has gone very wrong. And I'm sorry you're having to learn the truth this way. Your father, William, is your father in every way that matters. But not by blood. You were born from love. Your mother and I, we made some hard choices. And he wasn't ready for any of it. He came back when you were just a few months old. He promised to raise you. And he did. You were his world, even when he couldn't show it. But money makes people ugly, Ava. And my money, it's poisoned more than a few hearts. I left you something because you deserve to know you were always mine. No matter what he says. Love, always. Grandma Ruth. I sank to the floor, the letter shaking in my hands. Lena sat beside me, reading over my shoulder. So, he wasn't lying. Not completely. No, I said quietly. But he used the truth to hurt me. And to take something that was meant for me. She touched my arm. So what now? I looked at the open safe, the letter, the evidence. Now? I fight back. Because if my dad thought he could erase me with a lie, he had no idea what I was capable of when I had the truth. When Lena and I got back from the cabin that night, I didn't go home. I couldn't. We sat parked in her driveway under the glow of the porch light, the letter from Grandma Ruth resting in my lap like a burning ember. I read it at least 6 more times. Every sentence made my heart hurt. It wasn't just confirmation, it was a confession. The kind people leave behind when they know the truth is heavier than any explanation. She knew, I said aloud. She knew what he might do. Lena nodded slowly. And she tried to protect you from it. But the damage had already begun. My dad had started something I couldn't ignore anymore. It wasn't just about the will. It was about control. About erasing me. I finally went home the next morning. My dad was in the kitchen, sipping coffee, calm as ever. But the way he looked at me, I knew he wasn't surprised I'd gone. He didn't ask where I'd been. You're pushing too far, he said without looking up. I dropped the envelope on the table. She left me a letter. In the cabin. His face paled, barely noticeable. That was supposed to be private. It was addressed to me. My voice cracked. She told me everything. That I am your daughter. That you promised to raise me. That I was wanted. You don't understand what's at stake here. No, I snapped. You don't. He stood, voice hardening. I gave up everything for you. You think you have the right to take her money after everything I've done? Is that what this is really about? I whispered. The money. It's not just the money, Ava. It's what it represents. She always judged me. Always held it over my head. I gave her my whole life, and she was going to leave it all to you? A child who isn't even. Don't you dare finish that sentence. The silence that followed felt suffocating. Without another word, I turned and left. I stayed at Lena's for a few days. Her mom was kind enough not to ask too many questions. I told her it was a family disagreement. Technically true. During that time, Clarissa called. She'd heard from someone, probably her lawyer friend, that something was brewing. Apparently, my father had already started the process of contesting the will. He's claiming coercion, she told me over the phone. That Ruth was mentally unfit when she made the changes. That's a lie. Of course it is. But it doesn't matter if it's a lie. He's playing dirty, Ava. I looked at the letter again, now protected in a plastic sleeve. Then so will I. I spent the next 2 weeks collecting everything I could. Emails from Grandma, all recent, full of clarity and warmth. Photos of the two of us at the cabin, the garden, her birthday last spring. Lena helped me scan and organize everything. But the most important piece came from an unexpected place. I got a call from a woman named Beth. She'd once worked as Grandma Ruth's private nurse. She'd found my number from Clarissa. I don't want to get in the middle of a family fight, she said hesitantly. But Ruth, she adored you. She was very clear about wanting you to have something when she was gone. Did she say why? She said it was because you never asked for anything. And because she wanted you to feel protected. Beth agreed to write a statement about Ruth's mental clarity and intentions in her final months. It wasn't just about building a case anymore, it was about building truth. But not everyone was on my side. At school, whispers started. People heard bits and pieces. That my dad wasn't my real dad. That I'd been disinherited. That I was some kind of fraud. I'd always kept my life private. Now it felt like everyone had a front row seat to my unraveling. Even teachers treated me differently, sympathetic, awkward, like I'd been marked by some kind of scandal. I hated it. Lena stood by me, fiercely loyal, but even she couldn't stop the rumors. It was around this time that I started having dreams. In them, I was standing in the cabin with Grandma. Only it was empty, rotting. She was speaking to me, but I couldn't hear the words. Every time I reached out to her, she faded like smoke. The court date to read the will formally was set. My father would be there. So would Clarissa and the lawyer Grandma had chosen, Mr. Warren. The night before, I sat in Lena's room, knees to my chest. What if I lose? I whispered. You won't. But if I do, that's it. My dad gets everything. And it'll be like I never existed in her eyes. Lena looked at me, her voice firm. She knew who you were, Ava. So do I. So do a lot of people. You don't need a will to prove that. I smiled weakly. I know. But I do need it to stop him from erasing me. The courtroom was small, stuffy. The kind of place where the walls felt too close and the air too still. My father arrived in a navy suit, polished and impassive. He didn't look at me. Clarissa gave me a small nod from across the aisle. Mr. Warren began the reading. The first few sections were standard, small gifts to friends, a donation to the local library. Then came the big one, the estate, savings, and property. To my granddaughter, Ava Morgan, I leave the remainder of my estate, to be held in trust until her 18th birthday. There was a pause. Everyone felt it. My father's lawyer stood. Your Honor, we have reason to believe the deceased was not mentally fit at the time of this change. We are contesting the validity. But before he could finish, Mr. Warren raised a hand. I anticipated this, he said, almost bored. Which is why I had Ruth undergo a psychiatric evaluation 2 weeks before she signed the will. A copy is on file. Murmurs broke out. My father's face twisted, something between fury and disbelief. And Mr. Warren added, she recorded a video. For the court. He pressed a remote, and a TV screen flickered on. There was Grandma Ruth, sitting in her favorite chair by the fireplace, her voice strong, her eyes clear. If you're watching this, it means someone is trying to undo my final wishes. Probably my son. William, if that's you, I'm sorry. But not surprised. Ava is my granddaughter. She is my heart. And I will not let greed change what love has already decided. Tears burned my eyes. I heard a sharp breath from Clarissa's side. When the video ended, the judge called for a short recess. Outside, my father finally spoke to me. You think you've won something? He hissed. This won't fix anything. No, I said. But it protects something. And that's more than you ever did. The ruling stood. The will was upheld. My inheritance was safe. But that didn't mean everything was fixed. I went home one last time to pack my things. My father watched from the doorway but didn't say a word. As I zipped up my suitcase, I turned to him. I loved you, I said. I still do. But you lied to me. You tried to destroy me for money. And that's not something we can come back from. He looked tired. Older. Smaller. I did what I had to do. No, I said quietly. You did what you chose to do. Then I left. The days that followed were strange. I stayed with Clarissa for a while until the paperwork cleared. I started therapy. Slowly, I began to understand that grief and anger can coexist, that loving someone doesn't mean letting them hurt you. I read Grandma's letter almost every night. Lena and I made a pact to spend the next summer at the cabin, just like we used to. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I was beginning to heal. But deep down, I knew something else too. This wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning of the one I would write for myself. It was supposed to be over. The court had ruled. The inheritance was secure. I was no longer living under my father's roof. I was freed, or at least, I was supposed to feel free. But freedom didn't come with a sense of peace. Not when I found out he wasn't done. Clarissa was the first to tell me. He filed an appeal, she said, storming into the kitchen with a folder in her hand. He's saying the video was coerced. That you manipulated your grandmother. He even claims she had early onset dementia. My stomach dropped. That's not true. None of that is true. I know that, Ava. But he's not going to stop. He's angry. Not because you got the money, but because you exposed him. I stood there silent. Furious. This wasn't about love anymore. Or family. Or hurt feelings. This was a war my father had started, and he was determined to win it, even if it meant burning every bridge he ever walked on. And I was tired of being the one who had to keep rebuilding. I needed to end it. I asked Mr. Warren for a meeting. A private one. Just me and him. He was surprised at first. Then he listened, really listened, as I laid it all out, the lies, the threats, the emotional manipulation. The way my father tried to erase me with carefully planted seeds of doubt and cruelty. I don't want to win a legal fight, I told him. I want the truth to be louder than his lies. Mr. Warren leaned forward, steepling his fingers. There's one more thing. Something your grandmother didn't want revealed unless absolutely necessary. I stared at him. What is it? She kept a recorded confession from your father. From years ago. I blinked. What kind of confession? He opened a file and slid a small flash drive across the desk. She never told me what was on it. Only that it would make everything clear if things ever reached this point. It took everything in me to plug the drive into my laptop. Lena sat beside me, her hand gripping mine. I hit play. The screen flickered to life. The video was grainy, dated. My father was younger, maybe mid-30s, sitting in the same cabin chair Grandma had recorded her will from. His face was different then. Open, vulnerable. He kept glancing down, like reading from notes. I wasn't ready to be a father. Not to Ava. I said things I shouldn't have. I told her mother to go, to disappear, and she did. But Ruth, she didn't give up. She told me Ava was still mine, no matter what. I didn't believe her until I held her. And then I knew she was. She always was. He paused, breathing hard. I thought I could make up for it. I tried, but I've always felt like an imposter. Like if anyone found out, they'd take her from me. I couldn't handle that. So I lied. To everyone. Even myself. The video ended. I sat in stunned silence. So he had known. And not only had he known, he'd felt it. He'd loved me. And still, he'd tried to destroy me. That made it worse, not better. The appeal hearing was brief. Too brief. My father's claims fell apart the moment Mr. Warren played the recording. His lawyer fumbled, tried to object, but it was too late. The judge called the confession deeply incriminating and emotionally compelling. The appeal was dismissed. But it wasn't the judge's words that mattered most. It was my father's face as he heard his own voice betray him. He didn't speak. Didn't yell. He just sat there, motionless. And for the first time, I saw something in him that I hadn't expected to see. Regret. Real, sharp-edged regret. Outside the courthouse, as the crowd dispersed, he approached me. His suit looked too big for him now, like it had lost the weight of his confidence. "I never hated you," he said. His voice was low, hoarse. "I just couldn't forgive myself for what I did back then. And when I saw her choose you over me, it felt like the final punishment." I looked at him, not the man I'd built up in my memories, not the villain I'd faced in court, but a broken human being who didn't know how to love without hurting people. "You could have made it right," I said. "Any time. You chose not to." He swallowed hard. "I know." Then he walked away. And this time I let him. That night, I returned to the cabin. Alone. I lit a fire in the hearth and opened Grandma's letter one last time. I read it slowly, whispering the words aloud like a prayer. "You were born from love. You were always mine." Outside, the wind rustled the pine trees. The stars blinked above the lake. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid. Not of who I was. Not of where I came from. And definitely not of who I was going to be. This was the moment I stopped running. This was the moment I became my own. The cabin felt warmer now. Maybe it was the firelight flickering across the wooden walls, or the weight that had finally lifted from my chest, but something inside me had settled. I wasn't just Ava, the girl whose father tried to disown her. I was Ava, the granddaughter Ruth Morgan trusted above anyone else. And I had finally learned that being chosen, intentionally, fiercely, meant more than any bloodline ever could. The day after the hearing, I sat down with Clarissa at her kitchen table, a mug of tea between us. "So," she said gently, "what now?" I smiled faintly. "I don't know. Maybe for once, I don't need to know." She nodded, then reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "I'm proud of you, Ava. Ruth would be, too." I blinked back the sting in my eyes. "I just wish she was here to see it." She is. In every stubborn, clever, relentless inch of you. The weeks that followed were quiet, but not empty. The media had caught whispers of the case, some local articles, a few blog posts, but I stayed away from the noise. I didn't need validation from strangers. I had what mattered. I returned to school, slowly regaining some sense of normalcy. The whispers faded. People moved on. And Lena, loyal, unshakable Lena, stayed by my side every step of the way. We made plans to spend the summer at the cabin together. Gardening, painting, maybe even learning how to fish like Grandma always wanted to teach me. It wasn't about what we'd do. It was about reclaiming a place that was mine, that was ours. The inheritance went into a trust, just like Grandma intended. Mr. Warren helped set it up so it could support me through college and beyond, if I handled it wisely. And I would. Because it wasn't just money. It was a responsibility, a symbol of love, and a second chance to build something better. Then came the day I received an envelope in the mail. No return address. Just my name written in blocky, familiar handwriting. Inside was a short letter. My father's. "Ava, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't think I've earned that. But I want you to know I'm sorry. Truly. I see now how fear poisoned everything I touched. I wanted to protect what I thought was mine, and I ended up destroying what actually was. You. I'm stepping back now. I won't fight you anymore. I won't try to undo what you've built. I just hope someday you'll remember the good parts, too. Because they were real. Even if I lost sight of them." Dad. I stared at it for a long time. Part of me wanted to tear it up. Another part wanted to scream. But a small, quieter piece of my heart, one that still remembered bedtime stories and Saturday pancakes, let the letter rest gently in the box with Grandma's. Because I could hold both truths at once. He had loved me. And he had failed me. One Sunday, Clarissa and I drove up to the cemetery. We brought wildflowers, Grandma's favorite. Pink cosmos and lavender. I sat beside her headstone for a while, the breeze brushing my cheek like a hand I missed too much to name. "Thank you," I whispered. "For choosing me when you didn't have to. For seeing me when he wouldn't. For giving me the strength to stand when everything fell." I didn't expect an answer, but I swear, in the rustling trees, I felt one. That night, I opened a blank notebook and wrote the first sentence, "You're not even my real daughter." The words that started everything. the lie that became a wound, and the truth I had to fight for. But this time, I wasn't writing it as a memory, I was writing it as a story. My story. Because for the first time, I had the power to tell it myself. Not just how it ended, but how it began. And I wasn't afraid anymore. They say blood is thicker than water. But I've learned something else. Love is stronger than blood, and truth is deeper than legacy. I used to think family was about who raised you, who shared your last name, who showed up to birthdays and tucked you in at night. And maybe for a while, that was true. But when everything shattered, when the man I called Dad tried to erase me with a single sentence, I realized something more powerful. Family is who chooses you, who fights for you, even when it's hard, who tells you the truth, even when it hurts, who stands by you not because they have to, but because they want to. Grandma Ruth didn't owe me anything, but she gave me everything: her time, her love, her trust, her legacy. She saw me when I felt invisible. And when my world cracked open, her words were the bridge that carried me through. I still have bad days. Days when I hear his voice in my head. Days when I wonder if I'll ever trust completely again. But then I remember the cabin, the firelight, the sound of the trees, and the warmth of the hands that never let go. I think of Lena, my sister in every way but blood, who stood beside me when I felt most alone. I think of Clarissa, who saw through the lies and helped me find the truth. And I think of myself, not as broken, not as betrayed, but as rebuilt. Not everyone gets the ending they want. But sometimes, if you fight for it, you get the one you need. This isn't just a story about a will, or a lie, or a man who failed to be a father. It's a story about a girl who lost everything she thought she knew and found something far more powerful in its place. Her voice, her worth, her name. And no one can take that away from me again. I am Ava Morgan. And I know exactly who I am.